Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Chase the Monster podcast. It's good to be back alongside my two co-hosts, Owen Brown and Louis Gomez. I'm David Karras. We got the three-man crew here for the first time. We're here to recap this Red Sox Athletic series. Another successful series for the Red Sox. They ended up taking two out of three. The Athletics were able to bounce back in the series finale to win, but the Red Sox had two dominating performances in the first two games, outscoring the Athletics 13 nothing to end up winning the series and keep piling up these wins in September as we get closer to a potential playoff run from the Red Sox for the first time in a few years. But before we get into each game, as we always do, guys, I just want to open up the floor to both of you with just initial general thoughts on how this series went for the Red Sox against the Athletics. Owen, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, so thanks for having me back again. So yeah, I mean, I wish, obviously I wish we got the sweep. I definitely was a sweepable series, especially the way that we lost the series finale. But, all you could really ask for, especially this time of year, is you just win the series, and that's exactly what they did. Took care of business the first two games, two back-to-back shutout games. That's very, in today's day and age where offense is kind of the key in baseball, that's really rare to do. So, I mean, they were kind of firing on all cylinders, obviously a huge start from Garrett Crochet, a huge start from Connolly early in his major league debut. Bats were rolling, Trevor Story, Nick Sogard, a couple other guys that really stood out to me that we'll get into in a little bit. But you kind of took care of business. You got to 81, you got to 81 wins on the season. That matches the 2024 Red Sox season total of how many wins they had last year in 162 games. And we still have a few weeks left of baseball to add on to that. So, we're in a great spot right now, pretty much locked in that the Red Sox are going to have their first winning season since 2021. So, you can kind of take away from this series that, feeling good and, take that momentum and go into the New York series this Friday.
I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of disappointing that we couldn't get the sweep, but it's okay. No panic. What matters here is winning the series. I'm that type of person, but when you have a chance of sweeping, let's take it. But it's okay. Um, there's a lot of things, that I was like, okay, we're back. Garrett Crochet, he had an awful start versus the was it the team
Guardians.
versus the Guardians. I was about to say Indians. So he had a bad start in that sixth inning. So you wanted to see how he would come back. He pitched amazing. That's Crochet. And early. We should have called him early. But I liked how he pitched. His location. You could tell he's not scared. He didn't even look like a rookie at all. He didn't look like a rookie. He didn't. He looked like he had experience. But I liked him a lot, and there's a lot of positive things, like from Carl Harrison as well. I liked him a lot. I really did. He looked amazing, fooling the hitters. Like he looked really nasty, and hopefully we just keep building up and be ready for Friday night.
Yeah, so we'll get into the series here. First game back on Monday night, the Red Sox were able to shut out the Athletics, the first of two shutouts in the series, as previously mentioned, 7 nothing. This game, as we already alluded to, was all about Garrett Crochet. Owen, you touched on it a little bit. Lewis, you touched on it a little bit. It was a little bit shaky. Wondering how Garrett Crochet was going to be pitching coming into this game. He has had a bit of a few couple rough outings lately, but he put all the naysayers to rest for the time being, at least for this one. In this game against Oakland Monday night, Crochet threw seven shutout innings, striking out 10 batters and only allowing three hits. A stat to even prove more of his dominance in this game was for every his strikeouts to walk ratio was 5.43. So for anyone watching who may not understand that, That's just a simple ratio that shows for how many walks you allow, how many strikeouts you commit also. So for every one walk Crochet gave up per the statistic, he was striking out 5.43 batters, which is incredible. That's way above the league average, and this just shows his dominance in this game. And then on the offensive side, again, just an all around effort from the Sox in this one. They came out swinging in the first inning. Trevor Story had a solo shot, his 24th of the year. Two-run singles in the second inning from Nick Sogard and Duran, and they added two more in the fifth inning from a Carlos Narvaez solo homer and an RBI single from Bregman. And then the eighth inning, they added on their final two runs with Romy Gonzalez and Masataka Yoshida adding RBI singles. So just a really overall balanced effort in this one. You've got Crochet to eat up 7 innings, alleviate some of that stress on the bullpen, especially as we head into later September, potentially October. And then you got the offense as well. So we kind of already touched on it a little bit, guys, but just what was your biggest takeaway here from the start from Crochet?
For me, I think it's the biggest thing is, the rest, right? I kind of noticed that when he's had his off games, that's when he's usually working on 4 days rest. Whereas for this game, I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think he got 6 days rest, if I'm not mistaken, for this game.
I believe you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be it's a good thing, but it also is a red flag for me in the sense that, especially in the post, should the Red Sox make the postseason, they're certainly on their way to doing that. As a starter, you're not gonna have the luxury of having 5 days rest, especially when you're in an elimination game and you're gonna need your ace. So, for you guys, does that concern you at all if we're in a playoff game? And we've seen it before twice now with the Guardians and the Astros, where when he's working on limited rest, he's giving up more contact, giving up more long balls. So for you guys, does that concern you at all going into the postseason that Crochet might not be the pitcher that we've seen if he's working on limited rest in, say, an elimination game of some sort?
I feel like he's not, and it depends on the situation, but if it's, I feel like it's regular season, so they're just trying to be careful with him because, he has thrown more innings than last year already. So
And I was going to
it's
point that out too. Yeah.
yeah, so it's something new for him. So I'm guessing they're like, they want to protect him, and even though you could tell that he's good, you could tell he could throw more harder than 99, but you could tell he's not using everything. So that's a good sign because he doesn't just throw as hard as he can. He also protects himself, and you already know he's saving all that power for postseason. But I feel like it depends on the situation. If we're in an elimination game, then I think he will step up, and I'm pretty sure that he would like take them out. He will be down to do it. He's a beast. So yeah, but I feel like they're just trying to be careful with him and stuff. Especially he's throwing innings that he has never done in his life, so it's something new for him.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to bring up because now we're going into year two of him being a full-time starter. Obviously, last year was his first with Chicago, so obviously there's going to be some aches and pains. I kind of just look at, for example, like a perfect example is Chris Sale, where he'd have dominant first half, and then that's even 2017, 2018, right? That second half, he wasn't nearly as dominant because he kind of shot all his bullets in the first half, and so the second half, that's where we kind of saw like he wasn't as dominant. So, that's where I kind of allude to with Garrett Crochet, And, for the most part, I think you can only name maybe two or three bad starts that he's had all year. But, just noticing that, because he was working on short rest in those starts when he just so happened to not play his best baseball, that was where I was kind of a little concerned. But yeah, you brought up a good point there, Lewis. This is the most amount of innings he's pitched. And, I'm sure Andrew Bailey has a plan, especially come the postseason, on how to utilize Crochet and make sure that he's at 100% whenever he does take that mound.
Yeah.
And then what can you guys say about just the depth of this lineup with a guy like Nick Sogard in this game coming up clutch with an RBI single? I mean, obviously it's a gut punch when we lose Roman Anthony. We found out about that news week and a half ago about, he's not necessarily ruled out for the season, but it seems very unlikely that he'll be playing for the Red Sox again unless we make it relatively far in the playoffs, assuming we get there. But what has your faith in this lineup being able to produce ever wavered? I guess is my question, even with injuries and players funneling in and out.
Um, yes and no. I think that there are days that we have seen, especially especially in the I think it was the Guardian series, that finale when Roman went down, the Arizona series. When they haven't been, I don't know how to word it, but kind of there have been days where like they're kind of on fire, right? Like I think the A series is a perfect example. Took care of business game one, took care of business game two. But then you have other outings where, it just seems like they don't have an answer. So, it kind of, especially come the postseason, I just come to wonder, which version of the Red Sox are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that, finds a way to outslug you, gets it done with the as single, with the kind of small ball play, getting the RBI singles, not necessarily trying for the home run ball? Or is it going to be the game where they're putting up 14 or 15 strikeouts by their offense? That's the only question mark I do have because, we've seen, especially since the Roman injury, we've seen different versions of this offense. Sometimes they're going to come out of the gate swinging, and sometimes they're going to come out and not have an answer. So that's the only part that kind of concerns me a little bit is just the overall consistency. Sometimes they're on, and then sometimes they're off. And so that's when it especially comes down to postseason, you only have a 3-game series in the wild card, a 5-game series in the ALDS, 7 games for the CS and the World Series. What kind of version of the Red Sox offense are we going to see down the stretch?
I feel like it's gonna have to. It will depend of how we finish the season. If we finish hot, like doing really good in the offense, then it's gonna be like that. If we're playing like you know pitching games, like pitching duel games, then I feel like it's gonna be like that. But it creates opportunities to other players while Roman is recovering and stuff. Now, like more players are getting more reps. They're actually seeing the field more, and I feel like playing more and more gets you better. And like I said, we're not a team that only depend on one player. We do things by teamwork. So that's the good thing about the Red Sox, that we don't depend on just one player. So I feel like we're gonna be fine. We will figure it out, but it does hurt, like losing a bat like Roman, because he's different. He puts different at bats up there, and it kind of hurts, but he's not available, so we can't just like lose faith. You get me? So we gotta keep pushing forward. And recently, for the last 2 days, we've been we've been figuring it out at the offense.
Yeah, it's just an overall model consistency, right? Because when you had Roman in the lineup, you knew he was going to get on base. It felt like he was going to get on base every single game. Whether it was with a hit, whether it was with a walk. He always with him. It always felt like didn't matter the situation. He was always going to get on base and find a way to score.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's kind of like a lot of the guys have just kind of been streaky. Obviously Jaron Duran kind of a little bit streaky right now, kind of on the cold side. Cesar Rafaela, same thing. Alex Bregman, another guy. Whereas, on the other hand, you got Trevor Story. He's been on fire lately. So, it's just that kind of overall model consistency. That's the part that kind of just concerns me the most because a lot of the guys, like, we know what they're capable of doing in the lineup. We've seen it with Jaron. We've seen it with Sadon. We've seen it with Bregman. Those are kind of like your top. I mean, that's your top some of your top hitters right there. Obviously Duran batting leadoff or third, moves down when it's a lefty. Bregman, you're in that 2-3 hole. Rafael, you're able to kind of slide all over. But my point, I'm trying to kind of get to is, we know what they're capable of doing, but the problem is, they're it's kind of been streaky with them all season. They'll have one month where it's just like they'll tear the baseball, but then there's another month where it just feels like they can't make any contact. We even saw with Trevor Story early on with the month of May, obviously a May that he probably wants to forget, but point I'm kind of just alluding to is just, just the overall streakiness of kind of the offense where some guys, it feels like when they're hot, but when they're not, they are not. So, it's just kind of overall what streak are we going to see from this Red Sox team down the stretch? Are we going to see an offense that could stay hot, just do the small things to win games, or are they going to outslug you, or are the bats just going to have no answer whatsoever?
So we're going to move on to game two now. And as I alluded to earlier, very similar result to game one in this series. The Red Sox end up winning this one 6-0 this time. Big story in this one. We all know what's coming. The debut of Connolly early for the Red Sox. He had one of the best debuts you'll ever see, in my opinion, potentially in MLB history and definitely in Red Sox franchise history. Connolly early pitched 5 innings, striking out 11, allowing 0 runs, only allowing 5 hits and a walk. Very, very great performance. Like you couldn't ask for anything better out of a 23-year-old youngster, number 6 prospect in the Red Sox organization, flying across the country last minute, just having the goal of, being able to eat up innings, and he did just that. His whiff rate, swing and miss rate on his breaking ball was 45% in his debut, which is amazing. Did what he had to do. And yeah, just had an all around great game. And obviously, the hope is that he can build on that. And then the offense, again, another balanced effort from Boston. The offense got started right away. Romy Gonzalez hit a leadoff homer, extending his hit streak to 12 games. Bregman and Story followed up with singles, and then Ref Snyder hit a 463-foot homer to put the Red Sox up 4-0 in the first inning. And then Yoshida added an RBI ground out in the eighth. Romy Gonzalez also had an RBI double in the second. Yeah, just not too much really to say about this game other than just another straight dominating performance from the Sox. But what do you guys have to say about Connolly early? I mean, and let me expand this question even further because I think this has been a roller coaster ride of a season for the Red Sox, but one of the positives that I've seen is the production we've gotten from our prospects in either short stints or longer term forms. Obviously, longer term being Roman Anthony, what we saw him do for the Sox across 70 games this season, but even just the spot starts like Peyton Tolley, his incredible debut, striking out 8 against the Pirates. Hunter Dobbins, before he went out, he had a great debut in that first home series against the Cardinals, and I think he came up a couple more times and ate up some innings for us in a pinch. Kyle Harrison, which we're going to get into in this third game, but are you guys as encouraged as I am about the pitching moving forward for the Red Sox into the future from what we've seen from all these pitching prospects this season?
Yeah, I would say 100%. Obviously trading for the ace and Garrett Crochet last offseason was definitely kind of the sign that, things were going to start turning. And, when you have a guy like that in your building, and the knowledge that he's able to bring, and you can't tell me that, some of the rookie pitchers haven't been able, or younger pitchers for that matter, haven't been able to learn from a guy like Garrett Crochet. And even for his own right, he's only, I believe, 25 years old, and he still has that much wisdom and is able to teach so much to this Red Sox pitching staff. And got to give a shout out too to Andrew Bailey, who has been able to take kind of no name guys and been able to turn them into something. We've seen that obviously his success with the San Francisco Giants before joining the Red Sox organization. But even this year, obviously, you have some mixed results. Crochet absolutely dominant for the entire season, but then you have on the other spectrum, you got Walker Bueller, who didn't have the year that we wanted, and he ended up getting released. But that being said, I mean, you talk about kind of just the rookies and just some of the young guys being able to step up in a pinch. It's not an easy task, especially in a playoff race coming down the stretch to have guys making their first couple starts and them kind of ultimately deciding like could make or break the Red Sox season once we get to the end of the season. But the pressure isn't getting to them, and a guy like Connolly early, who one of the things that really stood out to me is he's not going to have the Peyton Tolley fastball where it's going to overwhelm you, but he has so much finesse when he's on the mound. Believe he got in his 11 strikeouts, he got 2 to 3 strikeouts per pitch for all of his pitches. I think he got people out on the 4 seam fastball, got them out on the slider, the changeup, the curveball. He had 2 seamer. He had so many different ways of
Yeah.
hurting you. And for me, that was the thing that stood out is he didn't need necessarily velocity to get batters out. He was getting them out just using the off-speed stuff and being able to and when you have a guy who can throw 5 to 6 pitches and control them very well, he could hurt you in a lot of ways. And that's what we saw on full display with Connolly early. And just overall, seeing these rookies, a lot of them, especially in kind of the season, how this season has played out, how many of them have been able to respond. This is what you like to see going forward. And even if they don't win it all this year, it makes you feel good as a Red Sox fan going forward for 2026 and beyond.
Oh yeah, that's true. I will tell you this. For him, literally, he didn't have time to prepare, and he had to take a flight right away on the same day and stuff. But he didn't have time to prepare, and for him to pitch like that, it was especially when games matters. Game matters at this point. We need those wins. And for him to step up like that, that was huge. And I'm not gonna lie, I think we have something good with him. I feel like we have a good one here. Because imagine what experience, you get me? You let him get more comfortable out there. He's gonna be imagine him pitching at Fenway Park. But I will say this. Um he does has a lot of control. He has control with his breaking balls, his fastballs, and he knows how to use it. And how many walks he had?
Just one in the fifth
Just one.
inning.
Yeah, like that shows it that he throws consistently strikes. That he doesn't walk people. He can control his pitches, and with that, I feel like he's just gonna get better and better, and it's just gonna build his confidence. You already saw after he was done pitching. Just they would like show him and stuff. He was literally right next to Crochet, and I'm like, yeah, that's who I want you right next to.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out too, just the poise he had, especially in your big league debut. Especially obviously cruise through the first 2 innings, obviously striking out the side in the second inning, but in the third, fourth, and fifth innings, he had some traffic on the bases.
Yeah,
Gave up 5 hits, had runners on first and second with one out, or first and second with nobody out, and for a lot of pitchers, especially in their rookie pitchers, take away the fact that this is his major league debut. Rookie pitchers in general, a lot of them will get flustered when they're in that situation and end up crumbling. But despite the fact that he was having runners in scoring position with no outs or one out, he was finding a way to get them out. And he was able, like I said, the strikeouts, he had so many ways of hurting you. It didn't matter if it could be the fastball, it could be the off speed stuff, he found a way, and like you kind of pointed to, Lewis, just the control. He had stayed poised and was able to find ways to get batters out. And when you have a pitcher who doesn't necessarily rely on velocity, more so his stuff to get batters up, that's a really encouraging sign going down the line. And something I wanted to point out too was, actually for me personally, I had a chance to actually see him in April when he was in Double A. Came out of the bullpen, pitched 3 innings, and I think he had like 6 or 7 strikeouts in that span. And you kind of just saw the poise early on. This is a guy who the numbers say he shouldn't be a strikeout pitcher, and somehow he's getting it done, not necessarily by velocity, but just using all the finesse to get people out. And so, you'd have to think, with more experience, uh, kind of getting the arm up to be able to pitch more innings down the stretch, possibly seeing more of a tick in velocity as he gains more muscle, I feel like the sky's the limit for this guy. I think he has a really, really bright future. Him and Toley, especially if Toley can figure out work on the breaking ball stuff, because he definitely has the velocity. It's
Yeah.
kind of like they're almost contrasting one another, you know. One has the velocity, not the off speed stuff, and the other has the off speed stuff, but not the
Yeah.
velocity. So, you know, if they could just kind of figure out those, work on those two things, oh my gosh, I could just, the sky's the limit with him. I think we could have three lefty aces in Crochet, Tolley, and early down if for 2026 and beyond. You know, as a Red Sox fan, that's really exciting to see because I think the last homegrown pitching talent that we've had that's you could say has been successful is John Lester. He hasn't pitched for the Red Sox in the 11 years. So, you know, it's really exciting to be able to see homegrown pitching talent and all the promise that they have going for the rest of this year and for going forward.
So now we'll move on to the final game here in the series. The Athletics would end up winning this one in walk-off fashion, spoiling the sweep, unfortunately, for the Red Sox yesterday. This is a bit of a back and forth game. Tolley got to start on the bump, first time starting on 4 days of rest, and unfortunately, the second straight start for Peyton Tolley, where he wasn't expected to go too deep in this game because, as we talked about, the Red Sox are mindful with Tolley and his workload. They're being very cautious of that, not overwhelming him. But he only ended up pitching 2 innings in this game. Gave up 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 strikeouts. So that cap for him yesterday was probably at 4 innings, I imagine. But obviously, we wanted him to pitch more than 2 innings. He only gave us 2 innings in the game yesterday. Scoring got started right away. Bottom one, Shea Langoliers took Tolley deep to left, just past the glove of Duran, who crashed in the wall, making it 1-0 Athletics. The Red Sox would end up tying it up in the top of the second as Nate Eaton hit an RBI double down the right field line that the first baseman Kurtz couldn't corral in his glove. He actually ended up colliding with Zach Geloff, the second baseman. The ball dropped in, but then Kurtz would redeem himself, hitting a solo shot opposite field to left to retake the lead 2-1. Then top of the third, the Red Sox would tie it up again as Bregman would hit a leadoff double. Then Story would bring him in with a double to tie it at 2. And then the Red Sox ended up taking the lead 3-2 as Jarren Duran drove in a run in the fourth inning. But then Tyler Soderstrom would give the A's the lead back, hitting a 2-run double in the fifth inning to give the A's the 4-3 lead. Then it wouldn't be until the top of the ninth inning where the Red Sox would come up clutch again. Rob Refsnyder continued his huge series as he delivered a game-tying clutch RBI double to tie the game at 4. Just a statistic here. Refsnyder has a 147 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitchers, which basically just means that he is raking against lefties. That's the easiest way I can explain it. The average for weighted runs created is 100, and Refsnyder's at 147. So he's 47% better than the average hitter against lefties. And obviously he showed it right then and there in that situation, had a huge hit in game 2 of this series. So that tied it up at 4. But unfortunately, the A's would have the last laugh as once again, Shea Langoliers led off the inning with a double in the bottom of the ninth off Aroldis Chapman. That was Aroldis Chapman's first hit he's given up since the end of July, ending a streak of 50 straight batters faced without giving up a hit and 17 straight relief appearances without giving up a hit. And then Lawrence Butler would step up to the plate and deliver a walk-off single to left field over the infield that was playing in to win the game for the Athletics and spoil the sweep. So, as you guys said earlier, winnable game, disappointing to not win these games, especially in September when we need every win we can get and, get a sweep against a underperforming or subpar Athletics team. But we still won the series. Personally, I'm not phased one bit, at least in the Chapman regard of this whole thing. Like he was bound to give up a hit at some point, and he is human. It would have been incredible if he went the rest of the season without giving up a hit, but that is 100% unrealistic. So I'm not sweating it at all. I mean, His expected ERA is still at 1.41 after this loss. And again, it was going to happen at some point. And I think it was mentioned during the broadcast yesterday that Alex Cora brought up a good point where the longer the streak goes on, it's awesome, but the more nerve wracking it gets because you know someone at some point is going to get the best of Chapman. But I'm not too worried about it. Again, we had our chances yesterday, wish we could have won, but yeah, we just keep taking the series. That's all that matters to me.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree. Yeah, couldn't agree more on that. I'd rather, and kind of you kind of alluded to this, David, but yeah, I would much rather Chapman giving up a hit now in a game like this where, we've already won the series, you know, obviously would have been nice to get the sweep, but, we've already won the series, which is the most important thing. And, I would much rather him give up the hits now than when it's playoff time in October and he has runners in scoring. We have runners in scoring position. I'd rather him be the dominant self that we've kind of grown to accustomed to over these last 2 months than in a game like this where, we've already won the series, would have been nice to get the sweep, but we move forward and I know Chapman will be a lot better than this going forward. So coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I think he's going to be okay, 100%.
Yeah, it's kind of good in a way that he got this out of the way, and he could like be normal. You know what I mean? Like at some point, you're just like you think about it as a human. Even we were like counting, but now that we're facing the Yankees, we could get that out of the way. It's like a fresh start for him, and focus on winning. But at some point, I feel like you're focusing more on that. You get me? On that streak that he has going on, and sometimes you're not gonna pitch the same way because you're thinking about that. But now that that's out of the way, I just want him to be him again, how he was, and to start a new streak.
And before we wrap up here, let's just give our predictions for how this upcoming series will go against the Yankees. Obviously, a very big series coming up for the Red Sox this weekend at home against our longtime rivals. It's going to be great. The Red Sox on the season are 8-2 against the Yankees. I have it right here. The Red Sox are pitching Giolito, Bayo, and Crochet. So who else better could you ask for to be on the mound against their division rival with games that matter for playoff seeding than these three guys, in my opinion? But how do you guys think this series is going to go? We can go around and do quick predictions too. I think we're going to take 2 out of 3. I could see us losing tomorrow and then winning the final 2 games, Saturday and Sunday. But I don't think we'll be able to sweep the Yankees for a second time this season, just out of respect for them. Um, but I think that we can win the series again, and that's what I'm going with. But how about you guys? How do you think this series is going to go, and what are your predictions?
I might be a little bold for saying this, but I really do think we could sweep them. And the reason why I say that is because the one game they played a 4 game series last time. The one game they lost, they had Giolito going, they had Bayo going, they had Crochet going. They won all 3 of those games. The one game they lost was when Dustin May was pitching. Now, obviously, we might not see him again this season because for better or worse. So me personally, I think that these guys know how to pitch against the Yankees. They don't let the pressure get to them. And for that reason, and we saw it on full display when they played that 4 game series. Giolito had a great start. Bayo had an amazing start. I think the lowest ERA amongst any pitcher in the live ball era against the Yankees with at least 10 starts, a 1.93 ERA, if I'm not mistaken. So, obviously Bayo knows how to pitch against them. And, Crochet too, went 7, 8 innings, 12 strikeouts the last time he went against them. So, it might be a little crazy for me to say, but, I truly believe we can sweep them, and I'm going to stick with that.
No, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been watching how they're playing recently, and because that's the Yankees that we're gonna get for this weekend. And on what's today? Today's Wednesday. Thursday. Thursday.
Thursday. Thursday.
On Tuesday, they score, and the Tigers scored 9 runs in 1 inning versus them.
Yes.
And
I'm glad you brought
yesterday,
that up. Yeah.
and yesterday they got embarrassed again. They lost 11-2, I believe. So I feel like it depends in the how they're playing. And even though last time we faced them, they were hot until they saw us, and they got cold versus us. So definitely means some shows something that we're different. But um, I feel like we're gonna be fine with the. I feel like we're gonna be fine at least, or I'm aiming to winning the series. That's what matters. And if Game Three is if we could sweep them, then let's take it. But right now the mission is winning the series. So I'm going. We win the series, 2 out of 3. But let's see, because but there's a big chance that, like Owen said, that we could sweep them. We
Yeah,
could.
because one of the big things is just they rely so heavily on the home run ball.
Yeah.
If they're and we have three pitchers right there that know how to pitch around them. When they're not hitting the long ball, they struggle. We've seen defensively they struggle. We see how offensively they kind of are a three true outcome team with the hit with either homer, walk, or strikeout. We saw that when we played against them last time. If you could just limit the home run ball, then you're going to be fine and you had the advantage of playing in your home ballpark as opposed to Yankee Stadium, especially for the left-handed hitters. I mean, obviously we know how short that right field porch is there. So, I think if you could limit the home run ball to even just solo shots or something like that, you're gonna win this. You're not gonna just win the series. I think you could sweep them. They have so many flaws on their team defensively and offensively. If you could limit the home run ball, you have a chance of sweeping. And I think the three guys you're sending out for this series are able to do just that.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this recap. This was fun having it be us three for the first time. This is the first of many.
Absolutely.
Yankees series this weekend against with the Red Sox, and yeah, we'll be right back at it with a recap for that one. So, alongside Lewis and Owen, I'm David. If you like these videos, hit the subscribe button, like button, share them, and we'll be back next time with more content. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Appreciate you guys.